Peskov urged restraint from all parties involved in the escalating tensions, stressing that peace and diplomatic negotiations must be the only focus, according to reports. The Russian position reflects Moscow's long-standing concerns about American military interventions in the Middle East and the broader consequences such actions have historically produced. Russia maintains significant interests in the region and has consistently opposed unilateral American military action against countries with which Moscow maintains relationships. The Kremlin's warning comes as the situation between Washington and Tehran reaches what observers describe as one of the most tense moments in years. The combination of military deployments, strong rhetoric, and the apparent narrowing of diplomatic options has created conditions where miscalculation could trigger a conflict with far-reaching consequences. The Russian call for restraint and diplomacy contrasts with the military buildup underway in the region. While the Kremlin urges negotiation, the United States is increasing its military posture with the deployment of carrier strike groups and additional air assets. Peskov's statement implicitly critiques this approach, suggesting that military pressure is more likely to produce destabilization than the desired outcomes Washington seeks, according to the reporting. Russia's position is informed by its own experiences and interests in the Middle East. Moscow has invested significantly in relationships throughout the region and views American military interventions as threats to the stability that Russia prefers. The warning about destabilization reflects genuine Russian concerns about the consequences of conflict, even as it also serves Moscow's broader interest in limiting American military action. The Kremlin statement represents one of several international voices urging caution as tensions escalate. While the United States positions forces and issues warnings, and Iran prepares what it describes as defensive measures and issues its own warnings, outside powers like Russia are calling attention to the potential consequences of conflict for the broader region and the international system. Iran's envoy is quoted saying Tehran is prepared for any scenario, including what Iranian officials describe as aggression. The statement reflects Iran's official position that while it does not seek conflict, it will defend itself if attacked, according to Iranian statements reported by media. Iranian officials have indicated that informal messages have passed between Iranian and U.S. representatives, according to some reports, though they stopped short of calling these exchanges formal negotiations. The claimed message exchanges are not independently verified. If accurate, the existence of back-channel communications would suggest that both sides maintain some interest in avoiding conflict even as they prepare for its possibility. Iran's stated preparation for any scenario includes both military readiness and diplomatic positioning, according to Iranian officials. Tehran has consistently maintained that it prefers diplomatic solutions, while insisting it will respond forcefully to any attack on its territory. This dual approach, stated openness to dialogue combined with clear warnings about consequences, has characterized Iranian messaging throughout the current escalation. Tehran's military leaders have been explicit about how Iran would respond to any attack, according to their public statements. Iran's defense ministry spokesperson warned that any U.S. or Israeli aggression would be met with what he described as a more painful and decisive response than previous conflicts, according to Iranian media reports. The language suggests that Iranian military planners have studied previous exchanges and believe they can impose greater costs on adversaries than in the past. Iran's first vice president has said the country has wartime plans ready, while reiterating that Tehran does not seek war but will defend itself fiercely if attacked, according to reports. The statement reflects the official Iranian position that military preparations are characterized as defensive in nature, intended to deter attack rather than to initiate conflict. High-ranking Iranian officials insist any American attack would fail, according to Iranian media, a message echoed by the judiciary chief who said what he termed enemy saber-rattling would not succeed. "We possess extraordinary defensive capabilities," one official stated, according to Iranian reports. "We are far more prepared than before. It is our duty and responsibility to defend Iran's pride, sovereignty, and territorial integrity." U.S. officials told Reuters the USS Abraham Lincoln and destroyers were deployed under CENTCOM to the Middle East region. Reuters says the deployment increases U.S. capacity to defend forces and gives Trump options, though intentions remain unclear. U.S. officials say the strike group includes guided missile destroyers. Exact loadouts are not detailed publicly. The deployment represents a significant concentration of American firepower in the region, providing Washington with options for both potential operations and defense of American personnel and facilities, according to defense analysts cited by media. The exact capabilities and operational plans have not been publicly detailed. The USS Abraham Lincoln has altered course from the South China Sea and is now sailing towards the Middle East with its strike group, according to reports. The redeployment reflects the priority the Pentagon appears to be placing on the Iran situation, moving assets from other regions to reinforce American military presence. President Donald Trump has discussed the deployment, describing what he called an American armada moving into the region. We're watching Iran, Trump said, according to reports. You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction, and we'll see what happens. It's a big force. We have a big force going toward Iran. Trump indicated he would prefer to avoid conflict while maintaining the military option. I'd rather not see anything happen, he said, but we're watching them very closely. The president also claimed credit for stopping what he described as 837 planned executions in Iran, saying he warned Iranian authorities they would be hit harder than they have ever been hit if they proceeded. An hour before this horrible thing was going to take place, they canceled it, Trump claimed, according to reports. They actually said they canceled it. They didn't postpone it. They canceled it. So that was a good sign. But we have a massive fleet heading in that direction, and maybe we won't have to use them. We'll see. Iranian sources have not confirmed Trump's account of these events. Iranian state-linked outlets published a propaganda clip purporting to show missiles striking a U.S. aircraft carrier. The video, which appears to use AI-generated or computer-generated imagery, according to analysts, claims American defense systems would be powerless against what it describes as Iran's hypersonic weapons. The video's message is blunt and its timing deliberate. It directly challenges Washington's defenses in its messaging. However, it is important to note that the video appears to be propaganda material using computer-generated imagery rather than footage of actual weapons tests or verified capabilities. The specific claims made in the video have not been independently verified. The video makes claims about the limitations of American naval defenses. The narration argues that U.S. shipboard radars and interceptor missiles would not stop a maneuvering hypersonic threat. These are the video's own claims, not independently verified assessments. Independent military analysts have not confirmed the technical assertions made in the propaganda material. The Iranian propaganda video makes technical claims about why American defenses would allegedly fail. The narration argues defenses would struggle to track maneuvering targets at extreme speed. Its own claim, not independently verified. The video asserts that at high speeds, targeting systems would experience difficulties, though these assertions represent Iranian messaging rather than confirmed military analysis. The video also describes what it presents as a saturation attack scenario. The narration claims that in such scenarios, fire control systems would be overwhelmed and defensive ammunition would be exhausted by less expensive attacking systems. Even the claimed 90% interception rate the video mentions would still leave some threats, the narration argues. These represent claims made in the propaganda video rather than independently confirmed military assessments. The specific technical details, including claimed missile speeds and system vulnerabilities, have not been verified by independent analysts. The video should be understood as messaging intended to project strength and influence perceptions rather than as documentation of proven capabilities. Military analysts urge caution in interpreting the Iranian video, noting the distinction between propaganda claims and verified capabilities. While Iran has invested significantly in missile technology and has demonstrated certain capabilities through tests and operational use, the specific claims made in the video have not been independently verified. The video's use of what appears to be AI-generated or computer-generated imagery rather than actual footage underscores its nature as propaganda rather than documentation. Such videos serve psychological and messaging purposes, attempting to influence perceptions and calculations. They do not necessarily reflect actual operational capabilities. That said, analysts note that Iran has developed significant missile capabilities over decades of investment. The country's approach emphasizes quantity and variety of missiles alongside efforts to develop more advanced systems. Whether Iranian capabilities match the specific claims in the propaganda video remains unverified, and analysts caution against accepting such claims at face value. Israeli media reports suggest that the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, and the United Kingdom could support U.S. military operations if conflict erupts, according to those reports. The support would reportedly include intelligence sharing, logistics, and participation in intercepting Iranian missiles or drones. These reports have not been independently confirmed, and the countries mentioned have not publicly committed to such support. The UAE has separately indicated, according to reports, that it would not allow its territory to be used for what it termed aggressive attacks on Iran, suggesting a more nuanced position than the Israeli media reports indicate. This discrepancy highlights the uncertainty surrounding regional positions. The question of regional support for potential U.S. military operations remains unclear. Gulf states maintain complex relationships with both the United States and Iran, and their calculations about participation in any conflict would involve weighing multiple factors, including their own security, economic interests, and relationships with various parties. Iranian commanders and IRGC-linked outlets warn they could target U.S. naval assets if conflict erupts, according to Iranian media reports. Ali Abdullahi Abadi has warned that any attack would turn every U.S. base in the region into what he described as a legitimate target, according to reports. The warning reflects Iran's stated asymmetric approach, which emphasizes the ability to strike American facilities throughout the region. Revolutionary Guard Commander General Mohammad Pakpour has said Iran is more ready than ever, with forces on what he described as high alert, according to reports. He warned Washington and Israel to avoid miscalculation as military assets converge and rhetoric intensifies on all sides. These warnings are consistent with Iranian military messaging, which emphasizes deterrence through the threat of imposing costs on adversaries. By warning about strikes on American bases throughout the region, Iranian commanders are signaling that any conflict would not remain limited to Iranian territory, according to their statements. Behind the scenes, diplomatic and military coordination is intensifying between the United States and its regional allies, according to reports. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has said an American delegation met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss Gaza and broader regional issues, according to reports. The talks included senior White House advisors and focused on what Witkoff described as next steps and continued regional cooperation. The discussions reflect the interconnected nature of regional security issues. The Iran situation does not exist in isolation, but is linked to the Gaza conflict, broader Israeli-Iranian tensions, and American strategic interests throughout the Middle East. Coordination between Washington and Jerusalem on these issues is ongoing, even as the immediate tensions with Iran intensify. The meeting also underscores that any American military action against Iran would have implications for Israel, which would likely face retaliation from Iranian allies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, according to analysts. Israeli defensive preparations and coordination with American forces are part of the broader picture as both countries assess the potential for conflict and its consequences. The result is a region fraught with danger where diplomatic brinksmanship, military buildup, and strong rhetoric collide, according to observers. Russia calls for restraint while warning of destabilization. Iran vows readiness while insisting it does not seek war. The United States positions its forces while claiming to prefer diplomatic solutions. And the margin for miscalculation narrows as military assets move into position. The current situation differs from previous U.S.-Iran tensions in several ways, according to analysts. The concentration of military forces, the explicitness of warnings from all sides, and the apparent narrowing of diplomatic options create conditions where events could move rapidly. Each side has publicly committed to responses that leave limited room for de-escalation once hostilities begin. Regional actors watching the situation unfold have their own concerns about being drawn into a conflict not of their making. Gulf states that host American bases face potential targeting by Iran, according to Iranian warnings. Israel faces potential retaliation from Hezbollah and other Iranian allies. And countries throughout the region would face economic and security consequences from any significant conflict. The Kremlin's call for restraint takes on particular significance as military forces converge and diplomatic options appear to narrow. Russia's warning about serious destabilization reflects Moscow's assessment that conflict between the United States and Iran would have consequences extending far beyond the immediate parties, per the reporting. Regional stability, global energy markets, and the broader international order would all be affected. Russia maintains significant interests in the Middle East and has invested in relationships with multiple regional actors, including Iran. Moscow's opposition to American military action reflects both stated concerns about unilateral intervention and practical interest in preserving relationships and stability in a region where Russia has worked to expand its influence. The Russian position also reflects a broader perspective on American military interventions. Moscow has consistently argued that such interventions produce destabilization rather than the stability Washington claims to seek. The warning about Iran fits this pattern, suggesting that military action would create more problems than it solves, according to the Russian framing. The claimed existence of informal communications between Iranian and American representatives offers a potential pathway away from conflict, though significant obstacles remain and the claims are not independently verified. According to some reports, messages have passed between envoys, but both sides have stopped short of characterizing these exchanges as formal negotiations. The core issues separating Washington and Tehran, Iran's nuclear program, regional relationships, sanctions, and security concerns, have proven resistant to resolution through previous diplomatic efforts. The 2015 nuclear agreement represented the most significant attempt at resolution, but its collapse has left both sides skeptical that negotiations can produce lasting results. For diplomacy to succeed, both sides would need to see negotiations as offering better outcomes than the alternatives. Currently, each side appears to believe that military pressure or deterrence serves its interests better than compromise. Changing this calculation would require either a shift in perceptions or events that demonstrate the costs of the current trajectory. From Tehran's perspective, according to Iranian officials, the current crisis represents another instance of American pressure against a nation that refuses to submit to Washington's demands. Iranian officials characterize their military preparations as defensive measures necessary to deter attack, rather than as preparations for offensive action. They present Iran as a country forced to defend itself against what they describe as a hostile superpower. This framing shapes how Iranian leaders interpret American actions and how they justify their own responses, according to their statements. The military buildup, the carrier deployment, and the presidential statements are viewed not as responses to Iranian behavior, but as the latest chapter in what Tehran describes as decades of American hostility. Whether one accepts this framing or not, understanding it is essential to interpreting Iranian statements and predicting Iranian responses. Leaders who believe they are defending against aggression may accept costs and take risks that would otherwise seem irrational. Any diplomatic resolution would need to address these perceptions. Washington frames its military deployments and warnings as deterrence and pressure designed to change Iranian behavior. From the American perspective, Iran's regional activities, nuclear program, and internal policies justify the pressure campaign. The military buildup is characterized as defensive and deterrent, intended to prevent Iranian actions rather than to initiate conflict. This framing shapes American policy and public messaging. The carrier deployment is described as just in case rather than as preparation for attack. Warnings to Iran are characterized as efforts to prevent specific behaviors rather than as threats of unprovoked aggression. The goal, according to official statements, is to change Iranian calculations rather than to start a war. The dispute between these framings, American deterrence versus Iranian defense against what Tehran calls aggression, remains central to understanding why diplomatic resolution has proven difficult. Each side interprets the other's actions through its own framework, seeing aggression where the other claims defense. The potential conflict carries significant implications for global energy markets and the broader world economy, according to analysts. The Strait of Hormuz, a major corridor for global trade where disruptions can ripple worldwide, could become a focal point if tensions escalate into actual hostilities. Iran has historically indicated it could affect shipping through this critical choke point in the event of conflict. Any significant disruption to oil flows or regional stability would affect global markets, according to economic analysts. Oil prices would likely increase, affecting consumers and economies worldwide. Shipping costs would rise as vessels face higher insurance premiums or seek alternative routes. Supply chains dependent on Middle Eastern energy and trade routes would face disruption. These economic stakes create pressure on all parties to avoid conflict, but they also factor into calculations of leverage and deterrence. Iran's ability to affect global energy markets gives Tehran options that complement its stated military capabilities. American economic interests and regional stability create constraints on military action, even as other considerations push toward confrontation. As military forces move into position and rhetoric intensifies, the risk of miscalculation grows, according to analysts. Both sides have publicly committed to immediate and forceful responses to any attack, leaving limited room for de-escalation once hostilities begin. In such an environment, an accident, misunderstanding, or unauthorized action could trigger a conflict that neither side intended. The warnings from Iranian officials about high alert and from American officials about readiness reflect the heightened state of tension. When military forces are positioned for rapid action and commanders are prepared to respond immediately to perceived threats, the margin for error shrinks, analysts note. The Kremlin's warning about destabilization implicitly acknowledges this risk. Conflict could begin not through deliberate decision, but through the interaction of forces and perceptions in a volatile environment. Once begun, such conflict would be difficult to contain, with consequences extending far beyond the initial exchange. The situation remains fluid and tense. The Kremlin has warned of serious destabilization. Iran has said it is prepared for any scenario. The United States has deployed military forces while maintaining that it prefers diplomatic solutions. And the margin for miscalculation continues to narrow as rhetoric intensifies and military assets converge. Russia's call for restraint represents one voice among several urging caution. Whether that voice will be heard amid the competing pressures of military positioning, domestic politics, and strategic calculations remains uncertain. The path to de-escalation exists, but requires choices that neither Washington nor Tehran has yet shown willingness to make. The world watches as the Middle East stands on edge. The consequences of conflict would extend far beyond the immediate parties, affecting global energy markets, regional stability, and the international order. The stakes are clear to all involved. What remains unclear is whether awareness of those stakes will prove sufficient to prevent the conflict that all claim to want to avoid. There has been no public confirmation of resolution from any party in the reports we have seen.